Hey yo guys, I'm back here to give you my thoughts on some of the news items that have taken place in the realm of combat sports. First off, just kind of sort of breaking news would be the fact that Strikeforce has added a new title fight to their already massive card with already two title fights on it. So this will be the third title fight on the card, which is now the heavyweight championship. Strikeforce's heavyweight championship will be on the line as Alistar Overeem will defend the championship against former apparent number one contender for the UFC heavyweight championship, Fabrcio Werdum. This fight really will be a good one. I think it's a good fight. I mean, there was been rumor that Werdum was coming in just to get this title shot, and if that's the only way they could get Werdum, I guess you give it to him. But I thought really the whole point of making sure they had a title fight on this August 15 card was to have Brett the Grim Rogers get the shot because first of all he just decimated Andrei Arlovski, one of the former UFC heavyweight champions, and definitely made it seem like, okay, he's getting the next title shot because, he's had, two good fights on your big Strikeforce shows, the Abungo Humphrey fight where, he had some adversity in there with, a point deduction, had to come back and get the victory, and then, of course, just decimating Arlovski. I thought really that was the whole point. So, once again, Brett Rogers gets left out in the cold due to, an unfortunate circumstance. We all know about Brett Rogers. He challenged Kimbo Slice last year back in the Elite XC promotion. Unfortunately, that fight never happened, probably because Elite XC officials knew that Rogers would probably defeat Slice pretty easily, and they just decided not to have that fight. And now, Rogers, gets absorbed in with the Strikeforce, picking up all the Pro Elite contracts, goes now to Strikeforce, has two good fights, and now gets left out in the cold again. So I'm not a fan of this, but obviously I think now he's obviously the number one contender, gets the winner of Overeem Werdum. Werdum going to Strikeforce I think may be a strong thing. I mean, Strikeforce needs to have some of these, top heavyweights. Brett Rogers is good. Arlovski, yeah, but we don't know how long his career can go from here. And I guess when they can include some of the guys that, fight on Affliction on their shows, but, we'll see. But now, you got a true one that, is going to represent your name, officially not coming from Affliction over. So I think that's a strong thing there. But yeah, that card's going to be freaking awesome. You have three title fights, just like the heavyweight title fight I mentioned. The first female heavyweight championship at 145 with the Gina Carano versus Christina Cyborg Santos, which is, one of the most anticipated fights in all of MMA. As well, finally the rematch will hopefully happen, knock on wood, in Josh Thompson defending the Strikeforce lightweight championship against Gilbert Melendez, which should be just a great fight as it was the first time. So hopefully, this card should be a really great one. Definitely check it out when it takes place on Showtime August the 15th. Of course, moving on to pro wrestling, the biggest news of the week would be an unfortunate incident that happened in the WWE. That would be the torn Achilles heel from Edge. This is, a big injury, as obviously the WWE had big plans for Jericho and Edge, to be with their tag team championships. They obviously were going to do something very important. They were going to obviously elevate the tag titles back to prominence that they had not seen in about a decade, I would say. So, this is just an unfortunate blow. But, the good thing is with, Edge being gone, at least, this wasn't last year at this time, because really, when Edge was gone, SmackDown was not what it not what it was because of Edge's departure. Edge was such a key component on there, but now they've brought back, they brought Jericho over, who's, just as qualified on the mic and is probably the best guy in the company right now, mic skills and in-ring wise, so I think he's definitely going to carry the big load there. You can obviously just go back to feud with Ray straight away, or you can do one of my suggestions and throw Dolph Ziggler and Chris Jericho together to feud with, be the tag champions and have Edge manage them. I think that would be a great thing right there. But yeah, like I said, SmackDown has, enough talent and, just that little trade deal they had. should be good enough. I mean, you have Matt Hardy, who now will get more time to be the heel he is, and plus you got Punk developing as a top heel, so big fan of that Punk development. But, it sucks for Edge, because I'm a big fan of Edge's work, but like I said, SmackDown at least has a lot of stability there, and I think Edge can still be on TV. Put him in a wheelchair. Right now, what they're trying to do is they were looking at a house show over the weekend where you had Khali take on Edge. They were looking to see if anywhere in there if there was a spot where they could blame it on Khali hurting at Edge. Or, you could you could just tell the truth and say it happened in this house show against I believe it was Rey Mysterio, it was Jeff Hardy, never mind, against Jeff Hardy. Just say that. Or, you could just, you could do something else where, Edge just gets, hurt in a match you tape for next week or something. I don't know. I think definitely the best option would be the Khali type situation, where you say, oh, they got hurt this way, and, just by pure ignorance or some stupid something like that. They could just say that, and then, of course, have Jericho and Kane help take him out and what have you. But, that's just, to me, a big loss. But there's still going to be enough stability on SmackDown to carry the show. Of course, another thing I want to make mention of is the Misawa funeral. It's uploaded now on YouTube. It was a special that G Plus put on. They showed some of his greatest matches, and they also showed clips of the funeral. This was a massive funeral. Let me just say this. This is probably one of the biggest, not only funerals in professional wrestling, but in probably all of sports. There were about maybe 15,000 or so people here. Maybe that, or maybe even a bit more. You should see, when it's on YouTube. I'll try and put the link into the description box. But, the line is just incredibly long for fans. It's 2 train stations long or something of that nature. It was just incredible. Especially, they show a lot of his important matches. They showed the match, obviously, with Jumbo Tsuruta, where it basically elevated him to top star status in all Japan. Showed him when he won the Triple Crown from Stan Hansen. Showed one of the Kawada matches. They show obviously a lot of those in the Kobashi stuff. They showed one of the matches I thought was interesting. It was Kenta Kobashi and Akira Taue versus Misawa and Masahiro Chono, which I thought was one of the... it was cool. Obviously they did it because, obviously all of Noah was going to be there. But New Japan decided, they sent everyone over, top talent, like you saw Hiroki Goto, you saw Chono himself, you saw Riki Choshu. So this was a nice thing for New Japan to do, make their way down to say rest in peace to Misawa, as, obviously it looked like Noah and New Japan, especially this year, have had, a real strong working agreement, as obviously New Japan's a fan of what Noah does and realizes that, Noah can add something special to their card, since New Japan's really the only television network company that has a television deal in Japan, with the exception of Dragon Gate, which is just about on the same quality that Noah's, satellite feed is on. But still, that was very nice. All Japan wasn't going to be there. A lot of people are going to say, well, it's, All Japan being, dicks because of how Misawa left All Japan, but really it's not that. All Japan's on tour and they're far away from the funeral, so they really couldn't be there, and I'm sure they would have, because I know Kejimoto was a big fan of Misawa, especially the tag match that those two were in, especially if you've seen the finish where I believe it's Muto hits, I think it's an Emerald Frozen or a Tiger Driver, a Tiger Suplex, and then Misawa comes and hits him with the freaking Shining Wizard. Just pretty cool little spot there. But yeah, that funeral, took place over the weekend. Really a big funeral. Obviously, it goes to show the importance of Mitsuharu Misawa in Japanese culture, really. We all know how important wrestling is in their culture, but Misawa, obviously one of the top 3 guys in the history of the business over there. Ricky Dozan, Giant Baba, and now you got to definitely put Mitsuharu Misawa. So, once again, rest in peace, Misawa-san. Continuing here, I want to go back to MMA. For those of you who tuned into the show that took place on Spike, it's airing basically for 5 nights straight. It's their top 100 countdown fights of all time. And to me, first of all, this countdown is a fucking joke. first of all, we all know fight number 1 will most likely be, I'm not going to guarantee anything, but it most likely will be Forrest Griffin versus Stephan Bonnar, the Ultimate Fighter Season 1 live finale, which, was an incredible fight. Let's just put it that way. A lot of people on the MMA message boards are like, man, I hope this fight's not number 1. It's because it was not really the most tactical fight. Well, it doesn't say this is the 100 most tactical fights in the world. It says the 100 greatest fights, and this was the most significant fight that the company had ever had because, I'm pretty sure Spike and the UFC would have signed a deal if, that fight wasn't as epic as it was, but it definitely solidified them to, stay on Spike for the rest of, at least for another 2 or 3 years, and now they've just grown that partnership for a very long time. And, without the UFC, Spike TV really wouldn't be anything since, they lost the WWE, which is a big demographic, and now they have a huge demographic of, MMA fans and, old school wrestling fans who haven't given up on wrestling and have found MMA as an alternative. But, like I said, this countdown is a freaking joke, as, most of the fights on their air yesterday were really, yeah, they may have been okay, but I don't think they were, the greatest things ever. And my problem is you excluded probably 2 of the greatest fights just because you didn't like the guys in them. All of Tito Ortiz's fights most likely on here are going to be of him losing. Ken Shamrock's fights are going to be of him losing. You excluded Ken Shamrock versus Tito Ortiz, which is, from UFC 22, which is just an incredible fight, and probably the best fight that that company had up until 2005 with the Bonnar-Griffin fight. As well, you excluded Maurice Smith versus Mark Coleman. That fight is actually very significant, as it was able to show that a striker, because Smith is a kickboxer, or still is a kickboxer, but anyways, the striker can still be relevant in MMA, because we all know, before UFC 1 started, we all thought, man, the striker's just going to dominate everybody. Well, Royce Gracie obviously proved that fighting is completely different than what the natural perception of it was. And then you had, the likes of Dan Severn and Mark Coleman show that, wrestling is just such an important aspect of MMA. And then Maurice Smith's like, no, man, I can do my striking as, just as good. And he proved that striking was still a relevant thing to MMA. He went toe-to-toe with Coleman, which, caught Coleman off guard, was able to, win. It was actually a great fight, and it's not going to be on this countdown because the UFC has this beef with Maurice Smith. So that's just one of my gripes. I don't like how they take this mentality of, oh, just because we don't like someone that their fights, they erase history. That's one thing I don't like. They obviously take the WWE Vince McMahon mentality on that, so it's something I'm not a fan of. I'll still keep tuning in just to see what they put on there, but not a good show at all. Not what you think the show should be. They didn't even put Ken Shamrock versus, Royce from like UFC 5. Yeah, it was a draw, but still that fight should be on there. So, I mean, there's just so many other fights that they're just leaving off just because they don't like certain people. And I guess, finally, before I wrap this video up, which would be the Cro Cop situation. As we all know, Mirko Cro Cop, after UFC 99, basically gave the impression to Dana White that, he was going to be there, but then he decided to go to Dream and, for Dream 10 and signed a 3-fight deal to fight Mighty Mo at Dream 10 again in September. And then he was rumored, had he won those 2 fights, to take on Fedor Emelianenko on, I believe, the K1 Dynamite show on New Year's Eve, which, probably would have been a blowout from Fedor, but still, it had intrigue as, Cro Cop's really over there in Japan. But still, it really looks like that's not going to happen, as obviously the Dream deal has fallen through, or Cro Cop has, not gotten the money he wants, or something of that nature has fallen through, as it looks, Lorenzo Fertitta flew to Croatia to meet with Cro Cop and apparently made him an offer he can't refuse. So once again, this goes to show the greatness that, Lorenzo Fertitta is to the UFC. I mean, if Dana was doing all the decisions and he couldn't get his way, then this company wouldn't be nearly as successful as it is. I mean, yeah, Dana helped do a lot, but still without the Fertittas, especially Lorenzo, because look, Lorenzo was able to get John Fitch to sign that deal that Dana was making all these terrible statements about the AKA guys, if you remember that at the beginning of 2009. It was Lorenzo who, probably more business-like, came in casual, and it's like, John, please sign this, and, John Fitch did. But now, he went over there and, made this deal and got Cro Cop apparently to sign when to come back with the UFC. Now, my thoughts on this are, Cro Cop's fights, obviously, in the UFC are not what they had been, and I was actually more looking forward to him going to Dream because, one, he's definitely more over and he's had more exciting fights, and I guess he's more used to the, fighting more so in a ring than the cage, in comparing that with the UFC. But, you know what, still, Cro Cop is a name that, the UFC is really trying to establish. They have the video footage to help get him over, from his glory days in Pride. So, we'll see where we go from there, and plus, the heavyweight division still needs, a little bit of work, and I think Cro Cop as a name, and give him the right opponent, I think would work. I don't know who you're gonna put him in with. He didn't want to fight Cain Velasquez, but I guess now you could put him in there. Against Cain, or I don't know, maybe you can give him Couture. Say Couture loses, or Couture wins, throw Couture at him. It's a fight we really wanted to see, so I think they could do that again. But I don't know. I think Cro Cop right now looks like to be a money man, and his career is winding down, so you really can't blame him that much. So, anyways, that's really it for me. I'll put in the link also my Twitter page where you can follow me and my updates on anything that's happening in the world of combat sports, and as well, still looking for a logo. And yeah, that's it for me. I'm out. Peace.